question for the channel. For anybody watching this and they are not familiar with the channel or just hearing it from word of mouth, um, why why is it important to make this kind of content?
The other side of this, the pseudoscience, the um, home birth advocacy, and really just even if it's not as extreme as the home birth piece of it, just the natural everything philosophies and that side of it is very loud and it's often you will never be in any type of social media group, which is where a lot of oftentimes we are reading and we're on that a lot. Like we're on Facebook, we're in groups, we're in online virtual networking type situations, and you will never see a post where somebody in one of those types of groups outside of maybe our VBAC group, which even then you see it just gets taken care of quickly, but you'll never see a question that doesn't really intersect with that, where someone jumps in and offers advice that is dangerous, or just with that maybe experience first mindset of like, but don't you just want this home birth with the candles lit and everything like that. So it's so loud and out there and in your face, and even the subtle shaming, and it's just all I read. So I know that we have to normalize more the safe side of it and just the science-based side of it, so that people are getting correct information, that they get enough of the other side of it so that they can make safer, better decisions that lend to itself to having a healthy them, a healthy baby, healthy parenthood, all of that, healthy life in general.
I agree with everything that Megan just said. Um, and also I can't count the number of times that I've seen in those spaces in real life, all of it, that someone has had something go wrong. And it's something that maybe goes wrong all the time, or it's something that doesn't go wrong all the time, but does happen sometimes, but they've never heard of it before, or just, I mean, lots of things go wrong in birth all the time. It happens, things go wrong. And there's this idea that everyone, it seems like, is living with, that no, it's supposed to be fine, it's always fine, it's usually fine, you know, you if you do everything right, then it's fine. And what that ends up creating is that so many of these people blame themselves. Like, they think, I didn't do this right, I should have done this, my body failed me, you know, because it's supposed to just work, because that's what nature does. And I'll tell you, I'm a biologist, and there is nobody in the world who trusts nature less than a biologist, because we know. And so I think it's really important to start, like, getting that idea out, that sometimes stuff just goes wrong because it goes wrong. There's not a reason. It's not a thing you did. It's not that if you had more tea to drink, or did more yoga, or read the right books, or any of that stuff. It's not because you did it wrong. It just happens. Sometimes stuff just goes wrong, and it's okay. And you made good decisions and got yourself out safely. Maybe that means you did great, or somebody misled you, and that's not your fault. You know, just that kind of thing. That I think the idea that everything is just going to go right if you do everything right is incredibly toxic.
I think I'm in the VBAC group because we listen to people and we try to answer the questions, but mostly I like about the VBAC group, and I like about this group, this channel, is that I really like listening to people tell their stories and in their way, and not having it fit some kind of cookie cutter narrative that they've heard somebody else say. And so I don't think, and the funny thing about the narratives that people hear is that they internalize it and they don't even know they've done it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll tell a story and you're like, oh, well, wasn't there more to that? Or that happened, my goodness, that was unusual. And they'll just gloss right over it. And you're like, how do you gloss right over that? That was really significant. You should, I mean, I'm not saying you should make a big deal out of it, but it was real. It happened to you. You know, this is not something that you should just like ignore just because everybody else doesn't seem to think it's important. So I want people to have a space to tell their own stories. I mean, the good, the bad, the ugly, the everything, and have people listen.
First thing that came to my mind was, I hope we're saving lives. Like, I don't want any more babies to die from neglect, from pseudoscience, from being in a cult, from being brainwashed. So I hope that we are touching people in that way. And second, this is a safe place for those of us who have lost their babies to process our trauma. And keeping it, we obviously, Danielle moderates, I'm sure she gets some hate on there, but a safe place for those of us whom home birth failed, and there are more and more and more of us. So that's why this channel has to keep existing and growing, because we have to get the word out there that this is unsafe practice. It is not evidence-based. Statistics and research shows that home birth is dangerous, and people need to know that and hear it. And if they're going to choose it, they have to know that risk, because no one in home birth midwifery is going to tell you you have a higher percentage chance of your baby dying, or you being harmed, or your baby being hurt, because not all babies die in home birth. Okay, some of them come out with injuries, birth injuries that aren't necessarily catastrophic, but they are life-changing. And so that's why this this channel has to stay in place, because hopefully we can save some babies, save some moms, and those of us who've lost, a place for us to process our trauma, a safe place.
I said this the last time I was on here. There was a reason that in those movies from the old days and before the hospitals, and you're living at home, like Little House on the Prairie. There's a reason why those movies and shows had talked about losing a child during birth or anything, because they don't have those resources. And as much as the biggest point to a midwife's conversation of a natural birth is to say, oh, well, you get to have the birth your ancestors had, and before all this medicine came around, and before the man took over and everything. Well, there's a reason why we don't really see current movies where they're like, oh, I lost my baby. And like, there's like here and there movies, but not that much, because even statistics will tell you there's a reason why they lost so many babies. And it's a normal, like, they don't even, in those old movies, they don't talk about like, oh, like, it's so sad that you lost your baby. It's like, oh, I lost my baby. Okay, let's go on to this adventure. And that's it, because that's what you did. That's what they did. And I'm sure if you were to bring the hospitals to those times and be like, hey, would you like to have your baby where there's people that can help you? I'm pretty sure most of those people would be like, yeah, why not? Like, I don't want to go through this. Like, and it's just, we have the resources. And as much as they want to bring in what our old ancestors did, there's a reason why they all died at like 40 and like 50. And there's that joke that, oh, you're 20-year-old, like, it's because there wasn't resources.
For me, it's important to make this content because I think that one of the most reliable attribute of a normal person is that when we think we've made a mistake or we've done something stupid that we're embarrassed of, we kind of shut up about it and we go into hiding. And midwives and the natural birth community rely on us to do that because they do a very good job of reminding us every step of the way that you're making these choices, you're making these choices, you're making these choices. And they put so much of the blame on the parents and even on the babies that get harmed or lost in the process of an out-of-hospital birth.
Madison, don't you think that's part of the brainwashing that they use, the gaslighting, the cult-like tactics?
Absolutely.
To suck people in?
When I lost my son, it was so instantaneously obvious that they were responsible for his death, even before we knew what the cause of death was. Just understanding how everything unfolded that day and the hospital that I got transferred to when my son did die, they worked very hard to make sure that I knew, like, no, this wasn't your body being broken. This wasn't you being stupid. This is a pattern of behavior that we specifically see from your midwife consistently. And it is something that we see in other midwives pretty often as well. And me being who I was, I just kind of knew from the minute that it happened that regardless of what his cause of death was, there was so much mismanagement on their end of things that it's not possible that this isn't happening to other people. It just seems so systemic, and the way that the whole community rallies around them, and every mother who's had a successful birth with them is like, oh no, it can't be that bad. Mine was amazing. Mine was amazing. And then a couple months after my son died, I had spoken with other mothers who had had babies with my midwives that their babies survived. And they're like, but I didn't really realize until you started telling your story in our community that me and my child were very close to dying or being disabled because of them. And we just lucked out. And they all had the same background of basically after their birth being coached by the midwives, how epic everything was, how strong of a woman they are, how proud they should feel. And it really just sits so wrong with me, the manipulation that is used within the community to keep people, even when you have been harmed by the community, you're still going up to bat for them. And I didn't really ever think that I would be speaking on like a YouTube channel that anybody can watch. I thought it would be mostly in my own community. But now seeing the results of all the work that Danielle has put into keeping this page up and moderating everything, there's so much positivity coming from it that it would be irresponsible. There's so many pages dedicated to natural birth and natural parenting. There's so many Facebooks, so many YouTubes, so many Instagrams. And like, even if you look up natural birth one time, your algorithm on all of your social media platforms is going to be triggered to showing you nothing but natural birth. And you fall into this kind of time warp wormhole that really makes you think that if anything happens in childbirth, it is just a freak accident and it's not going to happen to you. And there's nobody talking about the fact that it is real. And these stories are harming and destroying people all across the world. I think enough people have been touched positively that it's going to be kind of like a snowball where as it continues, it's just going to gain its own pull and it's going to grow on its own. And maybe this will inspire other people to start talking and starting their own YouTube channels. And maybe eventually, because we started doing this, Danielle started doing this, we'll be able to bring balance to the information that people receive.
Well, first, I'll agree with everybody. I think everybody's answer is exactly why the channel is what it is. This is kind of a harder thing for me because it's kind of emotional. This was a little bit for me to even get the channel started. But I say why it's so important is that from my own personal experience of being in the natural birth community and having no information, I had no information like whatsoever other than what they told me. And saying, your body knows what to do and your baby knows what to do and everybody knows how to birth their baby and stuff, that's not actually any information. That's no information at all. And as we've done this channel and as we've done more videos, we've actually said one of the biggest things that most people wish they knew more about was actually C-sections. No one is talking about C-sections. You can even go to birth classes at a hospital and they'll say, oh, there's C-sections that are happening and nobody's actually talking about it. So I feel like we're missing so much information. I feel like there should be both sides. You should hear about both sides. Everybody hears this like vaginal birth is the way to go, but yet there's a lot of people that have had a vaginal birth and it has been traumatic. It has been horrible. It has ruined people's bodies, but nobody is talking about that. Then we're hearing like C-section bad. And it's like, and we need to hear about C-sections. We shouldn't be scared of C-sections if we know for a fact C-sections were created to save lives, to save babies' lives, and not only babies, but also mothers. It's used to save mothers. And something that I want to say is, I believe it was it November or October that we heard Colorado, which is very close to us, actually, here in Nevada, 2 mothers died in 1 week at home birth this year. Just in case anybody's wondering, this is something, and I've kept it very quiet because, to be completely honest, that's very personal, because every mother that I've talked to with a home birth, there's a few of us where we have said, I don't know why, but I have this feeling, I think I was going to die that day if I didn't go to the hospital. And I know a few people, they've had blood transfusions, they've had hemorrhages, they've had terrible, terrible things, and they were in the hospital for a very long time after their home birth, and their baby had died. I know this for a fact. It was medical that saved their life. That is it, period. If they would have stayed at home a little bit longer, they would not be here today. And these are personal friends of mine. So I take this very, very personal, because there is some moments where I have to look back into my own reality of what was going on when it happened to me. And I think I was right there on that verge of that it could have happened to me too. So this is happening and no one is talking about it. When I went to Florida, of how the initially of this channel even got started, there was a lost mom that started a summit down in Florida, and she had some other lost moms and some other people go. When we went there, one of the people that was there was an attorney who had been fighting for a mother that died. So he was fighting for a mother with a bunch of children. She had, I think she might've had a couple home births before she actually died at home. And he was fighting for her family to have justice. And there was no laws. There's just nothing like that. And I feel like that is totally getting like buffaloed over. It's totally getting covered up. And even my own experience of when I just said my baby died, that's all I did was I said online, my baby died, and I had a home birth, and this was my midwife, or I just said I had a midwife. I didn't even say her name. I didn't say anything. People were harassing me online, and I got messages telling me to shut up. I got messages saying, you're grieving and you need to get over it. I had just lost my kid. Like, it had been like literally months. And the things that people were saying, like, I mean, was astonishing to me, because this is the community that I came from that was supposed to be about love and empowerment and sisterhood. But yet when my kid died, they stabbed me in the back so fast and kicked me out that door. It was like a whole nother world had happened. Like, so not only did I deal with the grief, and then I had to deal with facing the reality of Facebook and the manipulation that she had said, because I had to see what she was saying about me behind my back. So there's the grief of my kid, the shock of the grief of my kid, then the shock of what she did to me, and then what the natural community came to rally behind the midwife. And there's the biggest problem that I can say about home birth. You can rally all day behind a midwife, but the problem is, who's choosing those? You've always said it was our choice, but what about the families? What about those babies? What about the parents of the baby, the communities? Nobody's thinking about the big picture that everybody's affecting. And so I really, looking back, think about how misinformed I was, like so badly misinformed. I was told all the same crap that everybody is like, and it is cult-like. The way that they say it and the way that they do, it is a cult. They repeat it over and over and over and over. So you believe it. And at the beginning, when I hired her, she was a nurse midwife, is what I had thought. That's what she wanted me to believe. She was totally cool with C-sections. She was totally cool with medical care. She had a backup doctor, all this stuff. She was very believable, like so believable. So we thought she was going to give us the proper care and keep us safe, because that's why you hire a midwife, is to keep you safe. So as much as people want to say, oh, you chose a home birth, we're not free birthing. We're not birthing unassisted. We're paying somebody thousands of dollars cash to take care of us, to check baby's heartbeat, to check our blood pressure, to make sure that we're good, to check our pee. Like, we're supposed to be getting this care that's meant to be, if I see something wrong, I send you to a hospital. But what people don't know is either the lack of education and knowledge that they have being at home because they are not medical, for one, or the things that they do see, because they know overdue is bad. And I don't care what any of them say. They know overdue is dangerous, because if they didn't, why do they have like a special badge for the ones that made it to 42 weeks? Why do they make a big deal? I'm like going against medical science because I'm whatever, because I have an overdue mom. They know it's dangerous, and they're playing that with the people, their clients that they're taking money. They're taking out the risk so they can put it as like, it's like a notch on their belt. That's what it is. That's what we are to them, is a notch
We're
on their belt.
hashtags.
Yes. And
We're
so
hashtags.
we're
That's it.
hashtags. Exactly. They use us to make more money off from other people. So if you don't fit into their scenario of what they want you to be, their idea image, they delete you. They erase you. You cannot say anything. I don't want anyone to ever end up in my shoes, because it shouldn't happen. This is happening. And how can you be informed? How can you do your research when we have this natural community brainwashing people, completely brainwashing and giving people outdated information? There's the other thing. They're spreading outdated misinformation that doctors and medical people, medical science can prove is outdated and dangerous. We have to be those only people to like, if it starts with me because of what happened, I'll be that person and I'll take the crap of what it is, because it feels right to me. Like, it feels like this is the only way that I can get, hopefully, to the families that need it. Just like Christina said, it takes one life, just one baby. And I've done what I needed to do, because the reality is, living in our shoes is something that I don't wish on my worst enemies. I don't. I really don't, because it's another world to be in, and losing a child is something you have to deal with for the rest of your life. Like, it never goes away. It's nothing easy.
And losing a child that was completely preventable. Like, our babies did not need to die. They were healthy. We grew healthy babies. And the only reason they died was neglect from our midwives. They allowed them to die because of the cult-like gaslighting behavior that's within the home birth community. These babies would not have died under normal medical care. Our children would not have died.
And that's why when I came to everybody and was like, we're going to do something a little bit different, because we were doing summits. I was going to do a summit, and it didn't work out. COVID happened. And honestly, I'm really, in a weird way, I'm grateful that it did happen the way that it happened, because the summit would have only hit maybe your legislators, some lawyers. Like, it would have only hit locally. It would have only hit so many people. But I feel like going the route of what we have with technology, YouTube, Facebook, all these social medias, it's the way that we can actually reach each other.